reprise du débat.
Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. And I'm going to ask him to not put his telephone close to the microphone. Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very important matter that we're debating today. The chair, or rather the speaker, has recognized a question of parliamentary privilege that was breached in this matter that is being greatly discussed by the media. And in Quebec, it's not being discussed enough, but I think that'll come because with the scope of the situation, the scandal, this ArriveCan scandal, then what we're doing in this House is something historic. So for the people who are watching us, there is a bar that is at the entrance to the House here, and only members of Parliament and pages are allowed to come into the House further than the bar. And what we're doing is summoning someone to come to the bar to be reprimanded for having lied when he was questioned by parliamentarians, and he is also being reprimanded for not taking seriously the study that was begun by Ogo on the ArriveCan scandal. Madam Speaker, the motion is very, very clear. Christian Firth, who is one of the two co-directors of GC Strategies, to be in contempt for his refusal to answer certain questions that are in the 17th report submitted by Ogo, and to provide responses to supplementary questions arriving from his responses. Now, the credibility of our parliamentary system depends on this, because parliamentary committees are here to fuel debate in the House. They're set up to allow members to question people, to get information, to ensure that when we make decisions and when we craft laws, that we have all the information that we need. And that is why every single bill that is introduced in this House has to go through the parliamentary committee process, where people who introduce the bill need to provide information as well, and that is why we can summon witnesses. It is also an opportunity to allow us to hold the government accountable for its actions. So, for example, when the Auditor General tables a report that revealed the chaos around the ArriveCan app, it was supposed to cost $80,000, but it ended up costing $60 million to date, at least, because we still don't have the final numbers. Not even the Auditor General has them. And of that $60 million, $20 million went to a firm that acted as an intermediary, a firm that was hired to develop a computer app. And this firm knew how LinkedIn worked, but nothing else about computer apps. And so it's completely farcical to be paying millions of dollars, or rather sticking taxpayers with this kind of tab, especially when these public servants were doing no kind of work. So we wanted to question GC Strategies. Now, that is the name of the company. It's a private firm. And it is not surprising that it's called GC, because the firm wanted to mislead people into thinking that it had links with the Government of Canada. So already there, the firm was showing that it was not serious in the work that it was doing, and all it wanted to do was make as much money as possible off the government. So we heard from witnesses in committee, but they didn't want to answer our questions. They sort of took our summons with a grain of salt by saying, well, sure, we'll show up at committee, but we won't answer and nothing will happen. And too often that has happened in the past, and unfortunately, this example comes from on high. We saw in other parliamentary committees, for example, in the SNC-Lavalin affair, where the Minister of Justice was a victim of political pressure, and we were not able to get answers from the public servants who worked with her, but even from the Prime Minister and his team. Why? Because they were hiding behind cabinet secrets and so there was a report, and the Prime Minister was held accountable for an ethical breach. Well, he said, well, I take full responsibility for these actions and it won't happen again. So it's not surprising, Madam Speaker, that then witnesses show up to parliamentary committees and say, well, even if I don't answer, it doesn't matter, nothing will happen. But this time, we put our foot down. This time, all parties said, that's enough. People must answer our questions, and this is how we need to proceed to ensure that witnesses tell the full truth and nothing but the truth when it comes time to testify, not only for parliamentarians, but for all Canadians when testimony is given. I was a witness for Arrive Canada as well, where I was trying to find out who recommended GC Strategies, Madam Speaker, and it took me 3 questions before one of the public servants finally decided to name GC Strategies. It's completely unacceptable, and it is high time that the House of Commons and all of us here in Parliament, all of us parliamentarians here, put our foot down. Just a few examples. Mr. Firth, on the GC Strategy site. This is an example of a question that was asked to which he didn't want to answer. On the GC website, GC Strategies tries to find solutions to my problems. This quote is attributed to an executive official in the Government of Canada. Someone said that about GC Strategies. So we asked this question to Mr. Firth, and Mr. Firth refused to answer the question, and yet that is on the very first page of his website. So it was a GoDaddy site. Apparently the site doesn't exist anymore, but luckily we have screenshots that I'm not allowed to show you, but I do have them in my hands. And GC Strategies also quoted an ADM who said that, the vision of the firm and so on and so forth. And so that was praise to GC Strategies. And so we asked Mr. Firth who that ADM was, who gave him so much praise. And Mr. Firth said, well, in fact, he refused to answer our questions. Why is that important for New to know? We need to update our procedure around this testimony, because GC Strategies developed a computer app that was supposed to cost $80,000, but that ended up costing taxpayers $60 million. And yet GC Strategies knew nothing about computers or information technology. So my colleague who was responsible for ethics was very clear. He had a list of examples of lies that were told by Mr. Firth. In fact, we asked him if he had ever lied to a parliamentary committee. He refused to answer, so I guess he didn't want to lie twice. We asked him about public office holders who he had met outside government offices. He refused to answer, but that's important because we need to know about the ties, the relationships between the firm and Mr. Firth and other people with such a small number of employees.
We asked a simple question. It was the member for Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan who asked Mr. Firth how often he had sent invitations on LinkedIn. It's not a hard question to answer. 1, 2, 3. He refused to answer, Madam Speaker. So this is a very unusual situation, and it requires an extraordinary response. It is happening too often. Witnesses come to committee and they do not take the House's business seriously enough. And with the current situation, we need witnesses who come to committee to know that there are consequences to not telling us the truth and nothing but the truth. And that is why I support the motion to have Mr. Firth come to the bar in this House. Questions and comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the number of the comments that the member has made. What comes to my mind is the fact that we have an individual in which everyone is saying the same thing. We want this individual to come before the committee. For me, it's trying to take it to the next step because we haven't really experienced this for over 100 years. We want to ensure that there's a very strong, credible aspect to it. Can a member give some sort of an indication from his perspective as to how does he see interaction that would take place when you have someone called to the bar in terms of a question and answer type of situation?
The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, seeing as I am a member of OGO, I would tell you that we tried to have a meeting last week to discuss how to handle that. And we must, of course, count on the good faith of all members of the committee, but the Liberal chair of the committee refused to call the committee a committee meeting so that we could discuss that process. So today it is up to the House leaders to make that decision because we were not able to go through the whole issue in committee with the consent of all parties of the House, as we should have. Questions and comments?
For Peace River Westlock. The honourable member is not in his seat.
Questions and comments?
The honourable member for Skeena-Buckley Valley.
And through to my colleague from Mégantic-L'Érable. I know there's no lac in there. There is a lac there, but not in the name of the riding. I think he and I agree on much when it comes to this privilege motion. My question, today I received a strange email directly to my parliamentary email from the individual in question in which he apologized and then reiterated all of the statements that he's made, laying out why he was not in the wrong. I wonder if he received such an email, my colleague, and whether he feels that apology should somehow replace the actions that are in the motion that we're debating today, whether somehow by providing this non-apology by email to some members of Parliament, he should be off the hook for appearing at the bar and explaining to the House why he was so willing to ignore the parliamentary privileges of this place.
Well, l'honorable député de Mégantic.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Caught, he apologized. It's the second time he's doing it. So, no, he should appear at the bar of the House of Commons to answer for his lies and to answer for why he didn't tell all the truth, only the truth, to the parliamentarians.
Questions and comments, the honourable member for Peace River Westlock. Sorry, but
I just would
got
like
to
that
his seat.
about the contract that one of the contracts that was signed with GC Strategies and how the GC Strategies actually designed the parameters of the contract and then got the contract later on. I was wondering if he was aware of that and if you could explain that a little bit. Thanks.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. So now I'll answer in French because it's more of a technical question. That is precisely where the problem lies. We have to understand how such a thing could have happened, how a company could have been asked to drop the terms of a contract that it then obtained from the Liberal government. How is it possible for that to happen in this system? So I think it's because the Liberal government has been lax with regard to the various scandals that have come up. People might think that there is no worry or concern that anything will happen in committee if witnesses refuse to answer. And so we need to shed light on these situations and also the other many scandals that have arisen week after week. So I think that we must go forward with the privilege motion to send a clear message.